digital around the world.
We are pleased to welcome you to this session, A Farmer-Centric Approach for a Data-Driven Transformation of Agriculture. I give the floor to the moderator.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Nuria de Lama. Let me check if I can share one slide that I have for the session. I hope that all my speakers are here today. And in any case, let's try to manage like this. So thank you very much for joining this session that is called A Farmer-Centric Approach for a Data-Driven Transformation of Agriculture. It's my pleasure to welcome you all here. I think that today we have a quite interesting program. We will see how to use digital technologies and in particular IoT and data technologies for the benefit of agriculture. My name is Nuria de Lama. I'm European Programs Manager for the company ATOS. I'm also involved in the Big Data Values where I am chairing a working group that tries to understand the impact of big data technologies in the agriculture sector. And therefore, for me, it's really interesting to have the set of speakers that we have selected for this session today and try to understand how all these technologies can have an impact, what is already available, and what are the challenges that we have ahead of us. I would like, first of all, to give thank you to our sponsors of the session. You know that this session is sponsored by the Demeter project, which is a project funded by the European Commission aiming at transforming the agri-food sector precisely with this kind of digital technologies. And then also this is sponsored by Unipac in Brazil. So I think that it will also be very good to understand how we are doing things in Europe and how our colleagues from Brazil are doing and applying these technologies in the same sector. The structure of the session is that basically we will go through a set of presentations, starting with our sponsors, and then we will go to a second round of presentations. And for this, I would like to introduce already very briefly the speakers that we have for today. And then I will give them the floor to start directly with the presentations. We have prepared several questions, but of course, we also welcome questions by the audience. So I hope that some of you will have some doubts and some questions for them, and that would be great in order to trigger the discussion. So our speakers today are Kevin Doolin, coordinator of the Demeter project. He's also coordinator and director of the Innovation at the Telecommunications Software and Systems Group at Waterford Institute of Technology. We also have Humberto Fujita. He works for Unipac, a company from the Hacto Group in Brazil. Then we will have a combined presentation by the European Commission, and I'm very happy to have the combination of two different Director Generals. So we will have Joel Baquet, who is Project Officer at DG Connect, and then we will also have Doris Marquardt, working for DG Agriculture, also in the European Commission. After that, we will go directly to George Beers, and he's an information specialist and project manager at Wageningen University, coordinator of very important projects like IOF 2020 and Smart Agri Hubs. Then we will jump directly to Joe Carey, who will provide a complementary perspective on the use of wireless technologies in agriculture. And finally, but not the less important thing, I would say even the most important one, we will have Luisa Volpe, who will provide us with the voice of the agricultures since she is working at the World Farmers Organization. So I think it is a very complementary set of speakers. I hope that from here we will learn a lot. And without further delay, I would like to give the floor directly to our colleague Kevin Doolin from Waterford, and he will explain us some overview of the Demeter solutions for agriculture. So Kevin, the floor is yours. Thank you very much for accepting the invitation.
Hi, Nuria. Thank you very much. I hope everybody can see my screen right now. You don't need to see my face. It's not as good as the presentation. Thanks also to the organisers. It's great to see this event finally happening. I know this started off way back as IoT Week in Dublin, which never got to happen. So it's great that we all got together today. As Nuria said, my name is Kevin Doolin. I'm the Director of Innovation in an organisation called TSSG in Waterford Institute of Technology. And I'm also the coordinator of the Demeter project. So first of all, if we just briefly look at some of the challenges that are facing the ag-tech sector today, we really need to look at the kind of sectoral and policy requirements that exist and I suppose create some of these challenges or identify them. One is modernization of the common agricultural policy. It's a very critical element. With its focus on, for example, rebalancing the power in the food chain, supporting generation and renewal, ensuring fair income and protection of food and health quality. A lot of these types of challenges in the future CAP can be addressed to digitalization, but there are a number of bottlenecks that need to be overcome in order to do that, and those bottlenecks can include things like the lack of infrastructure, connectivity and broadband, to be able to bring our cutting edge technologies closer to the field. Also, I suppose on the non-technical side, there's in certain cases limited awareness on behalf of the farmers about the benefits that technology that can actually bring to them. It's not just enough to assume that if we build it, they will come, kind of thing. Farmers also need updating in terms of skills so they can engage in a very meaningful and productive way with the technology that's being provided globally. Back to the technology side, really interoperability between systems is relatively limited, quite often through a lack of defined standards in the space, or indeed through walled garden business models that exist. On top of all that, ownership of data is quite a critical issue. If you think about the future, the CAP, for example, we're trying to rebalance power there, but how can we do that if farmers can't retain their own ownership of their own data? Beyond some of these limiting factors, then there are also risks that we need to consider. For example, the digital divide, and particularly between small farmers and large, let's say, multi-farm players. This can increase a lot if equal access to technology is not provided. And the impact on jobs too must be considered. Like the more we automate, potentially the less we need humans in the agricultural setting. And then to add more to the mix, we also have pressures from the Green Deal side of things. Now, this can really be seen as an opportunity. So, increased technology deployment and increased support of intelligence to go with it can make great inroads towards sustainability, but not without considering the challenges I've just mentioned there. To the current group of projects that are in Horizon 2020 that are addressing these challenges, and I'll only touch on them briefly because I presume Joel and Doris might mention them. As you can see here, Demeter is located very much under the technology development group of projects, with another project called NEVA and another one called ATOS. I would argue actually that Demeter should somehow overlap into the uptake column as well, because we've launched our first open call for new participants, and we're also studying adoption models within the farming sector. So what is Demeter? Well, Demeter, the word Demeter is the Greek goddess of agriculture, in case anyone's wondering how we came up with the kind of strange name. We are a large-scale project. We have 60 partners across 18 different countries. The core goal of our project is to implement interoperability across the agri chain from farm to fork, particularly doing so at a data level. To verify our results, we've planned 20 different pilots across 5 major sectors, and these pilots are now already underway. We also plan a quite substantial dissemination of results, which we hope will result in increased uptake. And this is through the involvement of the World Farmers Organization. Also, the map here on the slides just shows the spread of our pilots all across Europe. I just want to briefly touch on our technical approach. Now, this is the highest level view you can get in the time allowed. So in the slide, you can see the essence of Demeter. At heart of this have what we call the Demeter Enabler Hub. And this hub provides a suite of functionality, for example, where interested developers and stakeholders can register their offered capabilities and resources. So they would act as what we call Demeter providers. And then there's Demeter consumers that can browse the Demeter Enabler Hub to discover capabilities, services, and resources and so on that match the criteria that they have set out there. The hub identifies and verifies all support necessary for establishing direct, secure communication channels between these consumers and providers. And then the enablers are made available to be services that are developed within Demeter, as we call them, Demeter enablers, or they can be resources offered by external stakeholders like third-party service providers or platform providers and so on. We also use this to connect the resources to what we call the agricultural interoperability space, which provides team-ups to create relevant combinations of tools and services for farmers, as well as what we call the SOCs, which is our stakeholder open collaboration space, which is to enable and support knowledge sharing. And together then, this allows service discovery from a functional and feature perspective to be used during the resolution of the various challenges that are launched through our co-creation mechanisms. Very critical to this is the MAA, which is our multi-actor approach, which we'll see in a lot of different projects. And through the multi-actor approach within Demeter, by the way, I should have mentioned we have about 6,000 farmers involved in the Demeter project through our trials and so on. But the multi-actor approach is where we actually create and support the co-creation of needs and identification of needs, the co-generation of solutions, the co-shared responsibility for efficient deployments, and co-organized support for optimal adoption. So to verify these various systems and that they work as we've planned, as I've mentioned, we've got a series of 20 pilots. And we've organized these into 5 broad categories that you can see here on the slide. Each one has a slightly different focus, and each pilot, by the way, is described on our Demeter website, so you can get full details there. But just as an example, looking at arable crops, we look at things like water and energy management. For example, smart energy management in irrigated crops or optimal rice irrigation. Also, under arable crops, we look at things like precision farming. So, for example, in-service agricultural machinery condition monitoring, or data brokerage, or decision support systems. In the fruit and vegetable sector, we're looking at areas, for example, like crop health and quality. So, for example, there we've got a pilot running on decision support systems for olive growers. In the livestock sector, we're looking a lot at animal health, and we're producing, again, as an example, a dairy farmer's dashboard and a dashboard for the meat production chain as well. And these dashboards essentially pull information from various different sensors, weather, and so on, and soil samples and things like that, and put it all together in a meaningful, inferred way to provide information for farmers. And then we have cross-sectoral pilots. For example, we're looking at pollination, optimization in apiculture, or enabling transparency in the poultry industry supply chain. So the point of all this is that we have a very, very wide variance between pilots. And the reason behind that is to ensure that the solutions we build within Demeter are relevant and they can be deployed in as very diverse settings as we can find. Last slide, and just to briefly say where we're actually at today. So we started working in September 2019. Our multi-actor approach is fully underway. Our initial requirements and architecture work is complete, and actually there's deliverables around those on our website. We have started piloting. It got a little bit delayed, I suppose, due to COVID, like everything else in the world. And we've also launched our first open call, which I mentioned a little bit earlier. So if anyone out there is interested in securing some funding to engage with the Demeter project, please check out our website for the open call details. And I've put links to everything we do on the bottom of the slide as well. Finally, just to say thanks, and if anybody would like to contact me, my contact details are on this slide here. Back to you, Nuria.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Now I realize that I see my image again. In fact, I think it was an internet issue. That's why I couldn't share my screen. It came few seconds later. These are the inconveniences of virtual events, but at least we managed, let's say. Thank you very much, Kevin. A very quick question for you. Are the solutions deployed by Demeter for big farmers or for small farmers or for any kind of farmer? Are there differences between the typologies of farmers and the technologies to be deployed?
Yes, is the simple answer. they're for every type of farmer, Nuria. And it's, as I said earlier, like there is a big issue around the digital divide. It's relatively easy for large-scale farmers with lots of money to purchase, high-end technology and roll it out, whereas smaller farmers can get left behind. And that's why we try to run our pilots across multiple different sectors and multiple different sizes of farms as well. As I say, we had 6,000 farmers on board. And we use those to get their requirements from the smallest to the largest type of farmers that we can provide.
Thank you very much, Kevin. We may come back to you later on if we have some questions. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
And now we jump from Europe to Brazil, and we welcome our colleague Humberto Fujita, who is working for Unipac. I think that, Humberto, you will focus precisely on a very concrete use case and a solution for a very concrete problem. So tell us about the problem and tell us about the solution. Let's see if it works better for you than for me. I think it's coming. Yeah.
Can you
we don't see your
Can you see my screen?
We see your screen, but not your presentation.
Okay.
Now we see it.
Okay. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on what part of world you are at the present moment. Thank you all for attending. Thanks, Nuria, for the introduction. Thanks, Kevin, for the nice presentation. I'd also like to thank you to IoT Forum for the space to present, and the Brazilian IoT Forum in the person of its president, Gabriel Marão, for the invitation. I will show today a case that we are working on. It's about IoT as a tool for food safety and a more sustainable agriculture. First, I will talk a little bit about Jacto Group, the holding company of Unipac. Then we will talk about the problem, the technologies to fight counterfeiting, and the solution we are proposing. Jacto Group has more than 70 years with so different business as agriculture machines, which is the first and the main business, plastic farming manufacturer, which is the Unipac business, and even resorbable implants produced by Synthetic Surgical Science, a company from Jacto Group. We have a global operation with 15 factories, most of them in Brazil, but also a plant in Thailand and another in Argentina. And a little bit about the history of the group. And the very beginning of Jacto, the tanks of those portable sprayers, our first product, were metallic made. And Unipac came up in 1966 to solve the problem of corrosion and chemical attack. So from the innovation of plastic tanks, Unipac started as a company, and since its early beginning, innovation was attached to our DNA. Today, Unipac is the main player of plastic packaging for agrochemical market in Brazil. We are also the bigger manufacturer of plastic fuel tanks for trucks and buses, as well as a provider of collapsible boxes and electrical vehicles for industrial logistics. So let's talk about the problem of counterfeiting in crop protection. It's a global problem. In Europe, the counterfeit trade of crop protection products is about 14%. This year, Silver X operation in Europe took off about 1,300 tons of illegal products off the market. In India, the fake products mafia is destroying apple industry because of substandard products. The same news we can find at Ukraine and several parts of the world. And in the Brazil, it's not different. As a matter of fact, in Brazil, about 20% of agrochemicals are counterfeit products. They're not tested, and very often they have banned chemicals by their toxicity to human, bees, groundwater, etc. And it's very common. They do not have any active ingredient, causing huge losses as the apple growers in India are facing now. So counterfeit product is a real threat to sustainable agriculture. And which are the technologies to prevent this illegal counterfeit agrochemical trade? We can divide these technologies in 4 broad groups. Over features, which are visible to naked eye, for example, holographic labels. And then we have the cover features. Are those designed to be verified only by the brand owners, and it makes this feature harder to be cloned than the other features. Invisible printing that need black light to reveal is a good example of cover features. Forensic markers are a subset of cover features where you have lab equipment to verify. So DNA, chemical microtaggants are examples of forensic markers. And finally, serialization and track and trace that generate a unique random number for each item to be followed during its life cycle. And we have barcodes and RFID as examples of such technology. The current anti-counterfeiting technologies used for agrochemicals are based on other features, such as holograms and other graphic elements. So, for example, this first example, we have a DAF from BASF, which combines a holographic label with a data matrix. In the middle, we have ISO label from farmer DuPont, which is a holographic label which changes the number sequence in each corner of the label depending of the angle of the vision. And the newest of these three is a buyer solution with holographic label and a kind of QR code and application to check the QR code to verify the authenticity. The solution we are proposing starts back to 2014. The early concept was based in an NFC tag outside the bottle, but then after we incorporated in the induction seal structure in 2017 in an inside the bottle concept. And the following year, SIAG, the Innovation Center for Agribusiness from Jacto Group, developed an app to check the NFC tag number, and we filled a PCT patent application. And the last year, we succeeded to approve the induction seal in all the homologation tests it must comply before go to market. Right now, we are running an MVP with one of the biggest players of crop protection in Brazil. And these are the requirements we had considered for product development. It prevent packaging reuse, refill it, be easy to identify by the end user, by the farmer, do not affect packaging recyclability. The packaging set, the bottle and the cap must attend the approval requirements, not change the customer filling line, and not change the packaging manufacturer. The solution we are proposing has the features of a level 3 smart packaging. It's based in serialization by identifier in an NFC tag through an app in an NFC smartphone device. And so we have an induction seal like that, which looks like a regular induction seal. The seal replaces the regular seal in the cap with no modification at all in the filling line, except an NFC reader after the induction operation to read and load the UIDs in the database. And it's possible to assign information to each UID as batch, filling date, expiration date, and so on. Once the bottle has the seal embedded at the cap, it can be checked anytime, anywhere you have data network access. We have an app installed in the smartphone that reads the UID of the NFC tag and check it in the database. If the UID is in the database, the app will inform the product to be authentic. Otherwise, if the app reads a different UID or cannot read the UID, it will inform it to be non-authentic. In addition, the act of opening the cap irreversibly destroy the NFC tag, making it possible to verify by the app whether the packaging has been tampered with. Here is a short video of the solution. So this is the induction seal already assembled in the cap. Here the cap is mounted at the next bottle. Then it is sealed to weld the seal over the neck. An app installed in a smartphone is reading the NFC tag and checking the UID. Thumbs up, the good is authentic. Later, the end user will open the cap to use the product inside the package, destroying the tag, and even screwing the cap back. The app will show that it has been irreversibly tampered. Thumbs down.
Umberto, you have 1 minute to finish.
Okay, in addition to the app, we have a platform where the brand owner can access this information, maps or graphs. And the main benefits of the solution is the fight against illicit trade, preservation of brand image, provide greater security to farmer customers, increase the market share, revenue preservation, increase food productivity, and possible to explore another kinds of relevant information to business. Thanks for your time. You can find my contact details here. Please feel free to get in touch. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Umberto. Are you looking for customers or are you looking for collaborators, distributors in Europe?
I think we're looking for both.
You're looking for both. So an invitation for people that are in this session, in case you're really working heavily in the sector, maybe you may be interested in this very concrete application. For sure, it addresses a very global problem, as you have exposed in the very beginning. So thank you very much, Umberto. I think for the sake of time, we will go directly to our next speaker. And in the same way that before we jump from Europe to Brazil, now we jump again from Brazil to Europe, and we will change a bit the scope of the presentation, because we will go from a concrete thing to something that is more generic, but also very interesting to understand somehow the context of digital transformation in agri-food. And I would like to invite our colleagues from the European Commission. We will start with Doris. I think that afterwards we will go to Joel, and they will provide us with some of the strategic aspects of the policy that the European Commission is defining on how to apply all these digital technologies and what the impact and benefits could be. Doris, I give you the floor. Doris from DG Agri will start. And of course, thank you very much for accepting the invitation to both of you. So you are having the same problem that I had before?
Yes, I have the same problem, I think. Maybe I can only share the whole screen, then let's do it like that.
Maybe just a question of some seconds, because before I shared the screen, and now I see myself very big.
And do you see my screen now?
We see your screen, but I see my face. We don't see your presentation.
Yeah, I think then
you have to select the right content when you share.
Yes, do you see it now?
I still see myself. I don't know what is the case of the others.
Joel, can you see the presentation?
No.
No, I think that you have to push again on sharing the content and then select the content where you see your presentation.
Yes, I think.
Now we see it.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Yes. Hello to everyone, a warm hello instead of good afternoon or good evening. Thank you to the organizers for the kind invitation. As indicated by Nuria, it's a joint presentation by Joel Baquet and myself. I'm Doris Marquardt from DG Agri, the European Commission, and it's in DG Agriculture and Rural Development, the unit for research and innovation. And we would like to foster in our presentation on enabling the deployment of digital and data technologies in agriculture in the European Union. So I also can thank my speakers before because they already provided a first overview of what is going on in Europe. So what is important to know that sustainable agriculture production is not only framed by the common agriculture policy. So many will have heard the keyword of the Green Deal or the Commission's ambition of the digital age. And we have already seen the research projects which are funded under Horizon 2020 and forthcoming Horizon Europe. And we also have a Digital Europe program. And all those together frame sustainable agriculture production in the European Union. And I will provide an overview how this plays and interplays together. So as it regards the Green Deal, I think most of those of you have heard about it and the climate ambitions the European Commission tries to follow and promotes. And we cannot go into detail here today, but what is important is that the so-called farm-to-fork strategy, which focuses on sustainable food systems, forms an inherent part of the European Green Deal to achieve those objectives. And without going into detail, the farm-to-fork strategy highlights specific targets and objectives, and it even quantifies the targets which are to be achieved by 2030. So they are not legally binding, but it's about targets for sustainable food production which are to be achieved through policies, and effectiveness of policies will be measured. So, and why I'm pointing to those objectives in the context of agriculture and digitalization. So if you look at the core objectives outlined here, the reduction of chemical pesticides, or to reduce the nutrient losses and reduce the fertilizer use, and increase in organic farming, then we see it as important that digitalization can enable farmers to better achieve those targets. And this picture you have already seen in the previous presentation. So it's for the future of the Common Agriculture Policy post-2020. And you see here, there are a number of sustainable related objectives. So it's economic sustainability, environmental sustainability. And we cannot go and reflect on all the individual objectives. But what is crucial in the context today is that there is a so-called cross-cutting or horizontal objective, which was already mentioned by Kevin at the beginning. It's about modernization the sector by fostering the sharing of knowledge, innovation, and digitalization. In this case, it's in agriculture and in rural areas. And it's also to foster the uptake. So we have two dimensions, the development of innovation and the promotion, but also the deployment and the effective use, which has to be encouraged and enabled. So I think in this community, it's well known that digitalization is a key enabler for achieving environmental and socioeconomic sustainability ambitions. So, and it's also recognized that the effectiveness of digital technologies strongly depends on data and data technologies. So both are going hand in hand. And if we look now at the situation in Europe, and I think that came also across in the presentation provided by Kevin, we know about the potential of digital technologies, but that potential is not fully exploited due to, among others, lack of infrastructure, for instance, broadband, the awareness of digital technologies, particularly among small farmers, lack of cost effectiveness, and a lack of trust in technologies, but also in data sharing. So what is now essential for increasing the deployment of digital technologies? We refer mostly to creating a so-called enabling environment. And that is why I pointed at the beginning to the cross-cutting nature of policies, and that it's important that we successfully interlink the different policy fields. So what is needed? It's not only about investing in broadband, but it's on supporting the development of digital skills. It's, yes, for sure, networking as we do it today, exchanging information and experiences at the different levels on research and innovation, but also on the ground on advisory services and tools how to do it. And facilitating investments, yes, for sure, that is always necessary or helpful for most farmers, they would argue. And at the end, we also have providing data and facilitating data sharing. So what I'm referring here to is, for instance, that public data can help the private sector to better perform in the application of digital technologies by more data at hand. And finally, yes, we have seen it, promoting targeted research and innovation, and we had already named some projects here today which are supported by European Union funds. Here I will not go into detail, but only to highlight what the member states in the European Union, or some of them, are doing, is to join forces to really promote digitalization in agriculture. And there, it's not about only small actions and working individually, but particularly in the field of digital and data infrastructure, you have sometimes reached the critical mass. And if the member states work together, then they can achieve it. So, and noteworthy actions here, so for example, are the setup of digital innovation hubs across Europe, which form a network and exchange experience among each other, the facilitations of AI, and also data infrastructure. And before I go into detail, I hand over to Joël Baquet.
Joel, you are welcome now. Maybe I can take advantage to make a question for the transition. Doris, you have mentioned like a lot of challenges, like trust on operators, lack of infrastructure, but do you think that the environment is favorable now to adopt digital technologies? Do you see a change of attitude or a change of mindset in farmers?
Yes, I think so. I think it becomes more common, and because you have the first applications, which are at the moment you can use without big investment, and farmers have to get familiar with more and more digital technologies to comply also with policy and administrative efforts. They also get keen to explore more, and for sure those transition is also supported by farmers associations. And if the farmers association supports the digital transition proactively and communicated also, then it's much easier. And I think also as it regards trust, farm advisors play a key role. So, and that is why it's like not only an ecosystem of innovation, but also an ecosystem of the digital transformation to make it work and really to bring it to the end user.
Thank you very much, Doris. And then we go directly to Joel. Joel, the floor is yours.
Okay. Can I get the slides from Doris?
We see them, but we see the slides shown by Doris, so your part of the presentation is there, but I don't know if you prefer to use your own part.
Okay,
so
no, it's fine, it's fine. So I'm Joël Baquet, I'm from the DG Connect. The DG Connect is mainly dealing with communication with the network content technology. So it's very much technology, ICT technology driven.
Joel, sorry to interrupt you. We don't see the slides anymore. I don't see them. I see the slide just as the image of Doris, but I don't see it in the,
you have to click, on the corner, on the
okay.
right bottom of the corner. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Next slide. Thank you. For the DG Connect, one of the key policy driver is the digitizing European industry. The main idea of this policy is to promote the adoption of digital technology and digital innovations in all sectors, of course, including agriculture. So for that, this policy has, let's say, 4 main pillars. And one of the pillars we are working on is on the platforms and pilots. And we have been funding a number of platforms and pilots that I will present you now in different sectors. You see, we have been funding, you see the funding budget below each of the different sectors in healthcare, energy, smart city, manufacturing, agriculture, and rural economies. We have been let's say, supporting financially a number of such pilots, basically making sure that the next generation platforms is really demonstrating in those different sectors. Next slide. So from what we've seen already from a presentation of Kevin, for example, that the digital technology, they have a great potential, wonderful potential to increase the farm efficiency, of course, to improve the economic environmental sustainability, the use of precision farmings, we are using more and more remote sensing, Earth monitoring, Internet of Things technology. So the automation also, it's very used. So therefore, the potential is quite, let's say, great. And the impact on the quality of life of farmers, the use of robots is definitely improving the quality of life of the farmers. So all this left side of my slides looks great, wonderful. Still, there are a number of challenges. And one of the key challenges I see now is most of those applications are run independently from each other. It means they are delivered in bundled form. It's difficult to get the flow of data between one and another applications, as they are run more or less independently. So that's why we have decided to go for this platform, trying to integrate different digital applications and to make sure also that there are interconnection between platforms. And also one of the second point, which is for me still a challenge, is what Doris was saying as effectiveness of the IT technology, the data technology, is being able to prove that the technology, the digital technology, have really a value because it costs something. So what are the benefits? So we need to showcase the benefits of those different digital technology. Next slide. And this is the reason why we have decided to go for large-scale pilots. The large-scale pilots we are supporting are not research actions, research projects. They are innovation actions. So basically, they are trying to demonstrate that the technology has a value for the specific sector. And now I can use also what the presentation of Kevin. The main purpose of the large-scale pilots is to demonstrate through use cases. You have seen a number in the presentation of Demeter, and you will see more, I guess, in the next presentation on IOF, that basically those use cases are there to provide evidence that the digital technology has a value and it makes a real difference, a big change for the farmers. So we have been funding a number of projects like you saw Demeter, IOF, ATOS are examples of those large-scale pilots. They are quite big projects with large number of partners, and they are also using a mechanism we call the cascading funding, which is a way to get additional players when the project is running. So it's not a project with a number of fixed partners, because we are opening up with this mechanism to newcomers, SMEs, for example, to be able to participate. They are not partners, but they are able to participate in the life of the project, mainly to add new use cases or to introduce new technology, for example. Next slide. I would like now to go on because data is very important. We've been listening to this before, and the European Commission has published through a communication the European Strategy for Data. This was released early this year, and if you look at this communication, it foresees a number of rollout of common European data spaces in 9 sectors. One sector is agriculture. The idea is there are a huge volume of data which are generated by all the apps you can find now, but we believe, and it's obvious, we exploited this huge volume of data. So the idea is to set up some kind of data market and to operationalize the data market. This data space the common European data spaces in the different sectors will be funded under a new program, which is called the Digital European Program, which is not a research program, it's very separated from that. It's what we call capacity building type of program. And for the European agriculture data spaces, we are thinking about being able to have access to data from production data from farm management systems, but also because there are a number of existing platforms where data are sharing, what I put in my slide, existing alliances and existing ecosystems. We're thinking about not only focusing on production data, but why not also having access to data from the full value chain and adding also open data, like the one mentioned there, satellite imaging, weather data, the soil mapping, and so on. What for? It's basically to create opportunities for better monitoring of the farms, optimizing the use of the resources, of course, and also being able to boost the testing of the artificial intelligence technology through what we call the TEF, which is a testing and experimental facility we are launching as part of the Digital European Program starting in 2021. Next slide, and this was my last slide. Thank you very much. And the next slide is a couple of links if you want to go deeper and get more information on the Farm to Fork strategy and digital innovation hubs and the digital declaration, which was mentioned by Doolin.
Thank you very much, Joel. Also, a very quick question for you, because when I'm listening to you, I get suddenly like a lot of different doubts and questions. You have a lot of experience in the agri-food sector. You have followed several projects, but it is true that in your unit, you are focused on applying IoT to different sectors. So you have had a lot of projects also on digital platforms for energy, for manufacturing, where there is a lot of experience for health. Do you see big differences between agri-food and other sectors? And then do you think that there are some more cross-sectorial aspects that can be used, or do we need like different solutions, different approaches depending on the vertical sector? So how different it is agriculture if we compare it, for example, to manufacturing when it comes to digital platforms?
There are
commonalities.
There are commonalities and there are differences. There are commonalities, and this is the reason why I didn't mention it, but we have also a support action which is running through the different sectors and try to put things together. But clearly the commonalities are in all sectors. The first start, when you are talking about platforms, you are facing the same issue, like reference architecture. In all sectors you are facing them. Why having reference architecture specific to a sector? Things which is common to different sectors. The standardization is also a key issue also from many sectors. And there are all these aspects on a data format might be a little bit more if you go into the sector specific, but there are definitely commonalities. For that, we have an action now, which is called Open DEI, which is looking at the different sectors, setting up working groups and trying to harmonize the different sectors because we really want to avoid silos, because there is no point for us to, finance platforms which will be again specific to sectors, very much silos and not exchanging data with the other sectors. And it's really what we want to avoid. So we are definitely pushing for, and it's for us quite a requirement, making sure that there are commonalities between different sectors. And we have this cross-sectorial aspect quite, let's say, reinforced by us.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Joel. I have more questions, but maybe I postpone them till the end of the session in case we have more time. Thank you very much. I think it was a very comprehensive view combining both perspectives, DigiConnect and DigiAgri. And you have provided also the scene for George. I think that at least the political somehow background is already quite clear, and you have been working in two projects. You are still working in two projects that are very relevant to this sector, IOF 2020 and Smart Agri Hubs. I think it's very important to look at the future, to understand the challenges, to define the strategies and the plans. But on the other hand, it's also very important to learn from current experience, to use the baseline. And from your presentation, I would really be interested in understanding what is already available, or what have you learned after all these years working in this sector with so many projects, and in particular with these two projects. What can we learn from them, and what can be shared with the participants here? So George Beers, thank you very much from Wageningen University, as I mentioned in the beginning. Thanks for being with us, and we are really keen to listen to your speech today.
Okay, thanks, Nuria. Is my screen visible?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Well, thanks a lot for the invitation and the challenge to present these two large-scale projects in 8 minutes. So I will skip a lot of, let's say, standard things and try to go to the issues that you want me to address. First of all, we are talking about is not rocket science. It's about implementation of existing technology, things that are on the shelf. It's about prototypes that are already validated in laboratories. So it's really what we call an innovation action in which we take new technology to the market. And the two projects that I will talk about, one is the Internet of Farm and Food. It's a pilot, so we are taking the existing prototypes and try to make them ready to market. And then Smart Agri Hubs is more for upscaling and reaching out to the 10 million farmers in Europe. So that's basically what the projects are positioned in. IOF, it's a 4-year project. It's pretty large. We stopped counting the partners. It's a 4-year program, and we are in the last year. So it's time to communicate some results. The project, the core of the project is the 33 use cases that we have all over Europe, and in different sectors. We have large farms, small farms, organic, traditional farms. So the whole mix is there in this portfolio. The use cases are pretty big projects in itself. So on average, they have about €500,000, and the typical use case is 5 to 10 partners working on a set of applications. What we do in the project is let's see. This is description, compact description of one of the use cases, just as an example. And what we see is how it, of course, what the applications are doing, the objectives. But what I want to emphasize here is that we also, for each use case, we identified the KPIs, and the KPIs are very specific. And they are here formulated as the rise of the growth of the production, the physical production, and also the more crop in terms of euro. And in this particular one, it's also labor reduction by 10%. So all use cases have defined their objectives in terms of very concrete KPIs. And in the project, we are very strictly monitoring them, and we are helping and supporting the use cases to realize these objectives. So they started with, let's say, mentioning the target values, and now we are measuring how far they are. And each year they will, or each season, they will report to us, and we will see and support them in making the improvements. So we have this for all 33 use cases. Very detailed in our collection. Just to go directly to the results and impact of IOF, I think what we can demonstrate is that we have proof of quite some improvement on these KPIs. So we have seen the benefits of Internet of Things on the use of chemicals, so reduction of chemicals, more water efficiency, the reduction of antibiotics in the animal production, more yield, better product quality. All these things have been monitored, and we have proved that they are realized by using this digital technology. It's also for animal welfare issues. It's for, I think, also for certification. So we have some applications in which we try to replace a farm visit by IoT technology. Same for traceability. So there are KPIs on the traceability of the products, on labor, and I probably forgot a couple of them. But this is what we have at use case level, and each use case is testing it and is delivering the proof in 5 to 10 farms where they are demonstrating their applications. So that's one set of results that we will deliver. Another one is that we pushed all the use cases not only to develop technology but also to make it future business. So not only the business model for the application, but also for all providers, so that all partners make money out of it, pushing them very hard. And I can say as we speak, about half of the use cases have already quite viable business models. So they will continue working without EU subsidy after the project lifetime. So that's, I think, a very good result. And the other half, we are still pushing them to improve on that. Then a very important part of our project and how we manage the project is on reusability. So not inventing the wheel over and over again, but using the results of one use case in another. So we brought the use cases also together to interact and to use each other's results. And an important tool of that is that we collected all the reusable components in our IoT catalog, which is at the moment publicly available, so it can also be used by other projects. And one of the other projects is Smart Agri Hubs. So we are using the catalog there, but we are also having a set of tools. As I mentioned, we are helping the use cases. We do it in 3 dimensions. So the technical support, the business support, and also ecosystem support. So having the right ecosystem. And that is, these tools are also made available in Smart Agri Hubs for the Digital Innovation Hub to use in supporting the projects that they are running. Then Smart Agri Hubs is about Digital Innovation Hubs, and that's to reach out to all the farmers. So Digital Innovation Hubs, we are targeting on 400 of Digital Innovation Hubs in the areas where farming is an important activity. Digital Innovation Hub is a one-stop shop for farmers where they can go for all their questions and investigations on digitization. But it's also the other way around. If there are interesting applications somewhere in Europe, the Digital Innovation Hubs are connected in a network so they can bring it to their own community. It's to enable the access to the latest knowledge, expertise, and technology. And so the hubs providing also the services on business, on technology, and ecosystem. And on top of that, they also provide services on the field of funding, access to funding. So that's basically that's it. Thank you for your attention, and there's a lot more to say about it, but this is for the 8 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, George. That is your phone. We hear a noise, but I don't know if it is a call from your phone.
It's my alarm for keeping in time.
Okay, perfect. But can I still make a quick question to you, also trying to take one of the comments that I see now on the chat. Since you've been working already with iOS 2020, you have deployed some platforms. Do you see a risk in the power balance that all these digital technologies bring to farmers? Because sometimes it seems that when you are deploying all these technologies, for example, we were talking about data, who owns the data, the farmer or the provider of the technology? Do you think that maybe some farmers may lose some power when including all these technologies, or do you have solutions that show very clearly that the farmer is somehow in control and keeping the power, and this doesn't get unbalanced with respect to IT providers?
Yes, I think what we are in an interesting time that we are, let's say, making a transition from promoting digitization. Now we also have to have eyes on the downside of the digitization, And definitely there will be downsides. What we see is that, for instance, we see in dairy, you can see the technology is used for upscaling, for having more cows, because you can manage them by your smartphone now and don't need to run around. And also there's an aspect that a lot of digital technology requires quite some investment. So there is, what we see is there is, let's say, more capital intensive intensity on the farms, and there are some aspects also that we need to be aware of. And last but not least is the imbalance in information. So who has the information? And okay, you can have what we see is that the partners in the value chain, they want the farmers to deliver all kinds of information. But if you ask a food processor or a trading company to reveal their margins, they are very closed in that. So there's an imbalance, a growing imbalance in information going on. So there are some downsides that we have to tackle, Nuria.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, George. I would stay hours talking about that. Unfortunately, we don't have so much time, but thank you very much. All these presentations will be available on the website, so don't worry, you can get access to them. With this, I go directly to the next speaker, who is Joe Carrier from Timble. He is joining us today from US, if I'm not wrong, from Colorado. Joe, the floor is yours, and you will also bring an additional perspective, also the one related to communication technologies, and in particular wireless technologies, isn't it?
Yes, thank you, Nuria. Thank you very much. And I'll be presenting on behalf of Connect Our Agro today. I'm on the board of directors of Connect Our Agro, which is our Brazilian Connectivity Association. Trimble was one of the founding members of Connect Our Agro. Can you see my screen?
Yeah. We said, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time left. That is always the problem for the last ones, and also that I talk too much, too many questions. So let's try to go quickly, because if not, they will not invite me anymore.
All right, great. So Connect Our Agro, as I said, is our Brazilian Connectivity Association, and the idea is we had 8 companies get together to found Connect Our Agro to provide connectivity in the countryside. What's happened, as many of our audience members are certainly aware, is agricultural machinery, tractors, harvesters, sprayers, and so forth, have become things in the context of Internet of Things. And we have a real problem all over the world, but Brazil is especially problematic with getting connectivity to these machines. And so we formed a connectivity association in Brazil to facilitate that, where many agricultural equipment operators or manufacturers, including Trimble, where I work, got together to help facilitate this, so a farmer could make an investment in connectivity and know that all his machinery, regardless of the manufacturer, would work with that. So in 2019, we covered 5.1 million hectares of Brazilian countryside. That included 218 small villages, 50,000 properties, over 500,000 people, and so forth. And this is a 4G network at 700 megahertz, and we could go at great length into detail about why we picked 4G and not 5G, and why we picked 700 megahertz. That was actually one of a great deal of the discussions the founders had was about that, and making sure it fit into the Brazilian legislative framework. And of course, as we go forward in to 2021 and 2022, we see continued growth in connectivity. Really, when we think about this digital transformation that that we've all been talking about, one of the biggest problems we have is how do we get data from the field back to the cloud? And that's exactly what Connect Our Agro is addressing. So, you know, the big takeaway for our audience members here is we have an open framework for connectivity. We're inviting new companies in. We're inviting others to join us in this. If you're interested in joining us in Brazil, if you have a presence in Brazil and connectivity is and agriculture are important issues for you, please contact us and we'll welcome you. So, Nuria, that's about as fast as I can go through these slides.
You did it very well. Thank you very much. We saved some minutes. And Joe, your presentation also brought like some additional challenges and questions for me, because I imagine that in this event in digital around the world, there were already some sessions about how to use edge computing versus cloud computing. So here in agriculture, I can see a lot of cases where we may need to combine different computing resources, and maybe we don't need the connectivity for all the applications. And but you know, it's a quite complex problem. In fact, the colleagues from the Commission mentioned that in the beginning, lack of infrastructure. So at least in Europe, there are lots of places that lack connectivity, and many of the applications may not be viable without that level of connectivity. But as said, that is a big challenge, and probably we could have a full session focus on that, no, Joe?
Yeah, I spend all my days thinking about that.
So thank you very much. And in any case, there is the invitation for all people that are in the session today to join you if they are interested in your initiative.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Joe. And with this, I would like to welcome our last speaker, but also a very important perspective, because I think that many of us come from the domain of technologies. We are used to talk a lot about technology, but finally we are talking about farmers. This time we have Luisa Volpe from the World Farmers Organization, as I introduced her in the beginning, and I asked her specifically to provide us with the view of the farmers, because sometimes we are very excited about technologies, but are farmers so excited? Do they see a danger or a threat in using so much technology if they were not used to do that in the past? How do they see them, all these technologies, and what is the level of penetration nowadays? Where are their main worries, and maybe things that we would need to take into consideration in our work?
Nuria, thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you also for the invitation to the WFO in this super interesting event. I have to say, also on a personal note, I've been learning a lot from my previous panelists. So I would really like to thank you, because it was such an experience to know about all the technology available to the farmers, and I'm sure they are also very glad to know that there are a number of actors working for them. Let me, in a couple of seconds, introduce what is the World Farmers Organization. We are a global organization of farmers. Our membership is composed by farmers only. We are national farmers organizations from all the continents, getting together to have a global voice vis-à-vis the global processes on agriculture. By global processes, I also include the capacity building of the farmers, which is one of our main pillars, and farmers' access to innovation and digitalization is indeed one of the first priority that our members have identified. So as I'm here representing the organization, I'm also bringing with me a huge mandate to from the farmers to discuss on what they really need and what the challenges are. The need of the farmers in digitalization is huge because digitalization is basically the response to the way towards a sustainable agricultural system, and actually the food system as a whole. Digitalization may be applied in many activities of the farming sector, in the livestock sector, as it was said, to monitor the animal health, but also in the health, in keeping the soils health. Soils are the first assets for the farmers, being them crop farmers, livestock farmers, forest farmers. Livestock is indeed the first capital that has to be in health, and digitalization may help also in the input management in an effective way, for example. So farmers are really keen to listen to what's available to them in terms of innovation and digitalization. But for an effective application of the digitalization from the farmers, what it is really needed is a consultation with the farmers, first of all. Farmer-led innovation and digitalization is the only one that can really function in the agricultural sector. Farmers are not supposed to change the attitude. Farmers are supposed to produce in a way that is also viable and profitable to them. And for this, I have identified 4 areas in which probably some improvement is still needed. One of these is the political environment. And in this, I include the regulation in the use of digitalization, but also policy coherence among countries and area and regions of the world, for example. The other really big chapter is linked to the investment capacity of the farmers, and so also the availability of some financial support for the farmers, from the insurance side, for example, but also from the local institution parts. The third big chapter is the infrastructure availability. Of course, this applies more to developing countries, but not only. It is something that governments, but also the full value chain may want to keep into consideration. And the fourth part is indeed the training to the farmers via advisory services that may be mainstreamed through the farmers' organizations that are very keen to work together with the private sector to bring the available solutions to the farmers, and vice versa. Sometimes farmers feel that research and innovation provides answers to questions that they have never made, and probably not to those that they really make every day. So we also have to close the gap in this sense. And for this, the World Farmers Organization has just established a scientific council, which is a council composed at the moment of 20 scientists from all over the world that are due to translate the farmers' language into the scientific language. So this is done on purpose to try to improve the discussion with the research sector. I will be very, very short. Only one point on the data management. Of course, we know that digitalization produces a huge amount of data. As it was rightly said before, I think it was George who said processor data is closed. Thanks, George, for saying this. Actually, all the other sectors' data are closed. So while for the farmers, there is an expectation that they open the data, which may be fine, but with some returns, probably in terms of accessing the aggregated data that then the ICT is able to produce, or in any other way, but this can be negotiated. Thanks, Nuria. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Luisa. I was sure that you would bring some additional points that were not tackled by the previous speakers. That was the reality. So we don't have much time. So I would like to finalize the session asking each of the speakers to say 1 or 2 words of what you think is the main priority. Where, since we don't have money to do everything, what do you think is the priority now to invest? And you have mentioned many different things: regulation, data sharing, infrastructure, skills. So just give me 1 or 2 words, each of you, and like this we will close the panel. So Kevin, you were the first speaker. Tell me 1 or 2 words about the main priorities in your opinion.
Ensuring data interoperability and getting data value from that data for farmers.
Data interoperability. Umberto.
I think the main problem here in Brazil, we have a lot of waste of food. So if we can reduce this waste of food, using the data to reduce this waste, I think it will be a good use of your time and money.
Thank you. That was more than 2 words, eh? Doris.
Yes, thanks. I would make 2 proposals. So first of all, capacity building at farm level, so really with skills and advice. And the second one, I think that was clearly highlighted, tailored solutions for instance, small farms or very specific problems which can be solved through digital technologies.
Joel?
Showcasing the effectiveness of the digital technologies.
That's a good thing for all the pilots and projects involved in the session today. George?
Yeah, it's a convincing demonstration.
More or less in line with that. Joe?
Yeah, I agree with what everyone else has said, but I would add connectivity, rural connectivity.
I was expecting that from you for sure. And then Luisa, you mentioned many before, but take just 1 or 2.
I'll give you 3. Farmers-driven approach.
Okay, so thank you very much with these words and a lot of open points, and I think that a lot of willingness to discuss about all these points. I would like to thank all our speakers and for sure all the participants in the session today. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you all soon. Take care. Bye. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Digital around the world.